Welcome to Norwich, Connecticut. This walking tour, presented by Rose City Renaissance, consists of two separate loop tours. The total tour length is 5.6 miles. Both segments begin and end at the historic Leffingwell Inn, located at 348 Washington Street. The first and shorter loop, at 1.6 miles, takes you through Norwich town, the oldest, predominantly colonial section of the city. The second and longer loop, at 4 miles, takes you through the Victorian Chelsea neighborhoods to the downtown and harbor areas of Norwich, ending back at the Leffingwell Inn via the marked Riverside Heritage Trail. Norwich is a city rich in history. Our hope is to provide the listener a glimpse into that fascinating history by following this audio walking tour route. For more information about Norwich, consult the Norwich Tourism Office, located at 77 Main Street during normal working hours, or visit the Otis Library, located at 261 Main Street. This production has been partially funded by a grant from the Connecticut Main Street Program and the Preservation of Place Program, in cooperation with the Commission on Culture and Tourism, with funds from the Community Investment Act of the State of Connecticut, and is read to you by Kevin Harkins. The tour is meant to be taken in conjunction with the downloadable route map provided, and contains 27 historic locations or waypoints, each of which is briefly described in the audio tracks. In addition, on the second Saturday of each month during the touring season, the locations will be marked by wayfinding banners. The banners are 18 by 12-inch flags, resembling golf course greens markers. Each location will be described on a single audio track. At the end of each presentation, press hold and advance to the following track upon reaching the next location. The first Norwich Town Loop consists of waypoints 1 through 10. The Chelsea and Downtown Loops consist of waypoints 11 through 27. Please exercise caution at road crossings, as not all streets have marked crosswalks. To begin the tour, start at the Leffingwell Inn, located at 348 Washington Street, and follow the directions as shown on the companion map. Track 2, Leffingwell Inn, 348 Washington Street. Waypoint number 1. In 1701, Thomas Leffingwell was licensed as an innkeeper. A small house on this site was enlarged to accommodate this new function. Benajah, Thomas' son, took over the business upon his father's death. About 1760, Christopher Leffingwell, Benajah's son, enlarged the house to its present form. A merchant engaged in trade with the West Indies and Great Britain, he established the first paper mill in Connecticut on the nearby Yantic River in 1766. Other enterprises he was involved in included shipbuilding, potash manufacturing, a pottery, the processing of woolen cloth, chocolate making, and stocking manufacture on knitting machines. He served as a colonel in the Connecticut militia and was a deputy commissary to the Continental Army during the American Revolution. In 1957, the house was moved to its present location to save it from demolition for the construction of Connecticut Route 2. The Society of Founders operates it as a museum open from May through October. Displays within the house feature furniture, silver, and other items manufactured by local craftsmen in the colonial period. Proceed to waypoint number 2, located at 365 Washington Street. Track 3, waypoint number 2, East District School, 365 Washington Street. The East District School was built about 1790 as a public school. Lydia Huntley Sigourney remembered her first teacher here as a tall woman, quote, with sharp black eyes, large hands, a manly voice, a capacious mouth, and a step that would make the echoes of the quiet schoolroom tremble, unquote. Her favorite class was spelling, quote, where we went above according to our own skill and the mistakes of others, unquote. In 1798, Consider Sterry taught private evening classes in bookkeeping, writing, and mathematics with an emphasis on surveying and navigation at sea. Dyer Harris, a later public school teacher, was known by his pupils as good-natured, prone to taking naps during school time, and for taking snuff. Anyone who wished to play outside could do so by submitting to 2 whacks from his ruler, old Goldings they called it. Proceed to waypoint number 3, located at 380 Washington Street. As you walk along this section of Washington Street, note the stone gate on your left, followed by the vista of an open meadow. This is Lowthorpe Meadow. You'll be traversing this area at the conclusion of the Norwich Town Loop. Track 4, waypoint number 3, Daniel Lathrop House, 380 Washington Street. Early settler John Olmsted was a shoemaker and the first physician in Norwich. He built his home on this site. His widow left it to Samuel Lathrop. After a fire in 1745, Dr. Daniel Lathrop rebuilt the house, incorporating elements of the earlier structure. Lathrop ran an apothecary shop, perhaps the first in Connecticut. His brother Joshua, who lived across the street, was his partner for many years. Benedict Arnold served the brothers as an apprentice to the apothecary business. Jerusha, Dr. Lathrop's wife, lost 3 sons before they reached the age of 4. According to Francis Calkins, quote, "The early childhood of a gifted daughter of Norwich, Mrs. Lydia Huntley Sigourney, was passed under the roof of this excellent lady. Having lost her own children in their infancy, she lavished all her maternal affection and fostering care on this child of her heart," unquote. In the 1800s, Lydia became a famous poet known as the Sweet Singer of Hartford. She remembered her benefactor fondly, and the beautiful gardens of flowers, herbs, vegetables, and fruit trees. In the early 20th century, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, feminist author of The Yellow Wallpaper, lived here. The Lathrop home is privately owned and is operated as a bed and breakfast inn. Proceed to waypoint number 4, located at 410 Washington Street. Track 5, waypoint number 4, 410 Washington Street. Christopher Huntington Home. Deacon Christopher Huntington was the first male child born in Norwich, November 1, 1660. He served as town clerk for 20 years and as deacon of the Congregational Church for nearly 40 years. His father and uncle were among the first settlers of Norwich, and it is speculated that they came from Norwich, England. The land this house sits on was given to him by his father shortly before his father's death in 1691. Deacon Christopher had 2 wives, Sarah Adgate and Judith, the widow of Jonathan Brewster. Of 12 children, 11 were still living when he died in 1735. His sons, Jeremiah and John, inherited the house. Proceed to waypoint number 5, located at 34 East Town Street. Track 6, waypoint number 5, Samuel Huntington Home, 34 East Town Street. Samuel Huntington was the most famous member of the Huntington family. Born in Scotland, Connecticut in 1731, he studied under the Reverend Ebenezer Devotion and married Reverend Devotion's daughter Martha in 1761. As a young lawyer, Samuel moved to Norwich and became a respected attorney active in the politics of the day. Events moved quickly in the 1760s and 1770s. Appointed as one of Connecticut's delegates to the Continental Congress, he signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. His steady temperament, tact, and diplomacy proved valuable skills in the often fractious Congress. In 1779, Huntington was elected by unanimous consent President of the Congress when John Jay resigned to become Minister of Spain. Under his leadership, the Articles of Confederation were ratified in 1781, thus creating the United States of America and the office of President. While holding the title of President of the United States of America, however, Huntington was not elected by the people, but rather by the members of Congress. His function was more as the chair or presiding officer of Congress, rather than the powerful chief executive created by the U.S. Constitution. He retired from Congress in 1783 and returned to Connecticut to become Chief Justice. In 1786, he was elected governor of Connecticut, a position he held until his death. He was governor of Connecticut when the Constitution was ratified in 1788. He died in 1796 at the age of 64. He is buried in a tomb in the cemetery adjacent to his home. For his role in American history, he deserves the title of Founding Father and the appreciation of a nation. Huntington's home was built in 1784 in the Federal style. The original porch had square two-story columns supporting the projecting cornice. A Victorian porch replaced this in the 1800s when projecting bays were also added. In 1917, the owners replaced the Victorian porch with a two-story Colonial Revival entry. The profile of Mohegan Chieftain Uncas in the back chimney probably dates back to that renovation as well. Today, the building houses the offices of United Community Family Services, a nonprofit dedicated to providing affordable health care services. Proceed to waypoint number 6, located at 69 East Town Street. Track 7, waypoint number 6, Daniel Lathrop School, 69 East Town Street. On his death in 1782, Dr. Daniel Lathrop left a sizable legacy to support a free grammar school in Norwich, located, quote, near where the meeting house now stands, unquote. A grammar school taught Latin grammar, as well as English and arithmetic. The school was required to be open 11 months out of the year and remained in existence until 1843. The area around you is the Norwich Town Green. This area was the original center for the English colonial settlement. Followers of Major John Mason and Reverend James Fitch came to this area in 1659. These early families were looking for new opportunities, which were less likely in the already crowded Saybrook and Guilford from which they came. They sought land, their own homes, and a community which shared their values. As you look around the Green, it's easy to imagine it as it was in the 17th century. The buildings around the Green reflect the needs of the colonists as well as their rank within the society. Taverns and shops, interspersed with homes of prominent residents, attest to the Green as a place of gathering and commerce. The Green itself was used as common pasture. Proceed to waypoint number 7. Located at 81 East Town Street. Track 8, waypoint number 7, First Congregational Church, 81 East Town Street. The first church or meeting house was built on the southwest corner of the Green in 1673, shortly before King Philip's War, in which the Wampanoag and Narragansett tribes and their allies attacked English settlers across New England. A new meeting house was built atop Meeting House Rocks, a superb lookout and defensive position. After the threat of war ebbed, later buildings were erected at the base of the rocks. The present church was built in 1801 after its predecessor was destroyed by arson. The Congregational Church was the official state church of Connecticut until 1818. Taxes supported the minister's salary and the construction of church buildings. Church attendance was required. Absence or failure to pay taxes were punishable by law, including whipping, jail, and fines. Families were assigned pews according to their status. The higher your standing in the community, the closer you sat to the pulpit. Reverend James Fitch was the first minister here. Sunday services were all-day affairs with lengthy sermons and prayers. The present building is in the Federal style. It features decorative elements such as the quoins, the stone-like blocks on the edges of the building, and arched windows. Both the outside and interior of the church reflect the austere simplicity of the congregational faith. Proceed to waypoint number 8, located at 85 East Town Street. Track 9, waypoint number 8, Samuel Manning House, 85 East Town Street. Built about 1750 for Samuel Manning, this gambrel-roofed house was later inherited by his son, Dia Manning. Dia Manning and his brother Roger served as drummers in the Revolution. Part of Washington's bodyguard, Manning was also said to have served convicted British spy Major Andre his last meal before execution. In 1800 to 1801, Manning and his family hosted an interned native of Haiti, Jean-Pierre Boyer. Returning to his homeland, Boyer later became the president of the Republic of Haiti. He sent $400 each to the widows of Consider Sterry and Dia Manning, who had befriended him during his captivity. Proceed to waypoint number 9, located at the entrance to the Norwich Town Burying Ground on Old Cemetery Lane. Track 10, waypoint number 9, Norwich Town Burying Ground, Old Cemetery Lane. Deacon Simon Huntington was one of the first to be buried here in 1706. A year later, his grandson of the same name, bitten by a rattlesnake in the adjacent meadow, joined him. Quote, "The meadow was hot. The blood of the youth was inflamed with exercise, and the poison exhibited its deadly power almost instantly. His body became swollen, his flesh turned purple, and he died in a few hours." Unquote. Among the interred here are Boston Trow, quote, governor of the Africa tribe, unquote, colonial merchant and entrepreneur Christopher Leffingwell, and Martha Waterman Arnold, Benedict Arnold's mother. 20 French soldiers who died here during the Revolutionary War are buried in this spot, along with Samuel Huntington, Connecticut's governor and signer of the Declaration of Independence, and thousands of others. Many of the gravestones are extraordinary examples of the carver's art. The other entrance, on East Town Street, features elaborate cast-iron gates. The gates were removed from the grounds of the old Hubbard Mansion, now demolished, and placed here in 1903 by the Faith Trumbull chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. To proceed to waypoint number 10, continue walking through the ancient cemetery in a southeasterly direction. The cemetery proper gives way to open meadow. This is Lowthorpe Meadow. Follow the mowed paths back to Washington Street. Waypoint number 10 is located at the stone entrance gate to the meadow. Track 11, waypoint number 10, Lowthorpe Meadow entrance, Washington Street. The founder of the Lathrop family in Norwich was Samuel Lathrop, a house carpenter who arrived in 1668. He died in 1700. In 1735, his descendants numbered 365. Dr. Daniel Lathrop, the apothecary, was the first to adopt the present spelling of the name. In 1907, 2 Lathrop descendants, Emily Serena Gilman and Louisa Gilman Lane, deeded the 18-acre meadow below, quote, "in consideration of their love and goodwill to the inhabitants of Norwich, and in memory of their sister, Maria Parrott Gilman, and of their Lathrop ancestry, to be kept as a free open space for the public good, to be unencumbered by dwelling house, barn, or any nuisance whatever." Unquote. Lowthorpe, the English village in which the family is thought to have originated, was used to designate the name of this new open space. The Lowthorpe Meadow Association manages this beautiful place. This concludes the Norwich Town section of the walking tour. Follow Washington Street to the right, returning to the Leffingwell Inn. Track 12, Chelsea and Downtown Loop. The neighborhoods you are about to tour are dominated by buildings and architecture of the industrial and Victorian periods. Norwich was blessed with an abundance of easily utilized water power provided by the Shetucket and Yantic rivers. The wealth made possible by these resources and the industrious efforts of Norwich residents is manifested in the numerous mansions and commercial buildings in these areas. Up and down Broadway and Washington Streets are gracious 19th century homes built in many styles by the successful businessmen of Norwich. At the turn of the 20th century, more millionaires made their homes in Norwich than anywhere else in New England. Downtown Norwich is a showplace of historically important and architecturally magnificent places, such as the Norwich City Hall, Governor Buckingham Home, and the Warrigan Hotel. To begin the tour, proceed south on Washington Street to waypoint number 11, located at the William W. Backus Hospital on the corner of Washington Street and Lafayette Street. Track 13, waypoint number 11, William W. Backus Hospital. By the 1800s, Norwich was a prosperous community of 23,000. The need for a hospital was evident. A community effort was organized to establish a modern hospital facility. The two major donors were William A. Slater, son of cotton manufacturer John Fox Slater, and William W. Backus. Slater was a principal in both the Slater Mill in nearby Jewett City and the Panema Mill in Norwich. Backus, a descendant of early settlers, was a farmer raising corn, rye, potatoes, grass, and turnips. He also was reputed to have owned more cattle than any single owner in New London County over a period of 50 years. While his donation of $185,000 was only about half that of Slater, it represented a far greater portion of his wealth. When he died, prior to the hospital's opening in 1893, the hospital was named after him. One bed of the original 63, however, was reserved for employees of the Panema Mill. To proceed to the next waypoint, continue along Lafayette Street, keeping the hospital and cemetery on your right. Waypoint number 12 is located at the entrance to the Yantic Cemetery. Track 14, waypoint number 12, Yantic Cemetery, Lafayette Street. In 1844, the city of Norwich opened the Yantic Cemetery for burial. A rapidly growing population was filling the city's cemetery downtown and the Norwich Town burial ground. The new cemetery was a steep bluff overlooking the Yantic River. Located between the city of Norwich and the older settlement of Norwich Town, the location was semi-rural, although there was an active industrial center with worker housing at the nearby Yantic Falls. Unlike the earlier burial grounds, such as that at Norwich Town, Yantic Cemetery was designed in keeping with the park-like setting fashionable in cemeteries being created in European cities, where families could gather to honor their deceased members. The elaborate grave markers were typical of the Victorian era. Almost 400 Civil War soldiers, some reinterred from battlefields and prison camps, are buried here, as well as Governor William Buckingham and U.S. Senator Lafayette S. Foster, important political figures during and after the war. Here, too, are manufacturers like John Fox Slater and William P. Green, as well as mill workers, store clerks, and others. Underground Railroad hero David Ruggles is buried in his family's plot, although his grave is unmarked. To proceed to waypoint number 13, continue down Lafayette Street, bearing right for a short distance on Sherman Street. Waypoint 13 is located at the head of a flight of wooden stairs on your left. Track 15, waypoint number 13, northern terminus of the Riverside Heritage Trail, upper falls of the Yantic River, Sherman Street. Down these stairs, a wooded, grassy area was the site of a number of industries in the late 1700s and the 1800s. These included a woolen mill, bobbin mill, pistol shop, file works, braiding mill, and other uses. An aqueduct from a dam further upstream provided power to these mills. The remains of foundations and the tail race where the water exited the mills can still be seen. By the late 19th century, this complex was known as the Commonwealth Mills. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Falls Company built the brick electric generating station here to provide electricity to the mills further downstream. The old mill site was then abandoned. To proceed to waypoint number 14, retrace your steps back up the stairs and turn to your right, proceeding a short distance and bearing right following Sherman Street to Yantic Street. Turn right on Yantic Street. Waypoint number 14 is located at the entrance to the footbridge over the falls. Track 16, waypoint number 14, Yantic Falls, Indian Leap, and the Yantic Mills Complex. Yantic Falls, or Indian Leap, is a natural waterfall on the Yantic River, which has been enhanced by a dam. The increased height and fall of water provides a spectacular sight when the river is in flood, or in winter when ice coats the surrounding rock cliffs. 16 years prior to the English settlement in 1659, a battle between the local Mohegan tribe and the Narragansett tribe of Rhode Island took place at nearby East Great Plains. The Narragansett tribe lost that battle. Some fleeing members of their tribe jumped off the cliff to their deaths on the rocks below, giving the name Indian Leap to the chasm. Industry began here shortly after the English settlement. John Elderkin, a millwright, built the first grist mill at the foot of the falls to convert local grain into flour. The small stone mill near the falls was a paper mill built in 1837. Further down are the mills of the Falls Company, a cotton manufacturer specializing in striped awning cloth for storefronts. These mills date back to the 1800s and 1880s, when steam power was introduced to supplement the water power of the river. The mills closed in 1960. During its heyday, almost no water flowed over the dam and falls. The entire flow of the Yantic River was diverted through the mills to power the machinery. Brick multifamily houses on Yantic Street were built and owned by the Falls Company to house their workers. To proceed to the next waypoint, retrace your steps up Yantic Street to its junction with Sachem Street. Turn right on Sachem Street. The waypoint number 15 is located at 59 Sachem Street. Track 17, waypoint number 15, 59 Sachem Street. This Gothic revival cottage is reminiscent of the rural cottages advocated by A.J. Downing. It was built about 1850 by Levi Hart Goddard and his wife, Mary Woodbridge Goddard. In 1872, Louis Comfort Tiffany married their daughter May Goddard here. Donald G. Mitchell, a cousin of the Goddards, was a frequent visitor. Under the pen name of Ike Marvel, he wrote Reverie of a Bachelor and Dream Life, amongst others. The large apartment building just past this house was originally the Third Congregational Church, or Center Church, later occupied by the Falls Methodist Episcopal Church. To proceed to waypoint number 16, continue down Sachem Street. The waypoint is on the right. Track 18, waypoint number 16, Sachem Terrace. This cluster of Victorian homes was built in the 1880s and 1890s and are excellent examples of the Queen Anne style of architecture. The different types of exterior wall coverings, clapboard, fascia, flatboard, and shingles are typical stylistic features. Dormers and porches with turned woodwork are also hallmarks of this style. To proceed to waypoint number 17, continue down Sachem Street. The waypoint is on the right. Track 19, waypoint number 17, Royal Indian Burying Ground, Uncas Monument, and Mohegan Burial Ground. This small enclosure is only a small portion of a much larger burial ground that stretched along the bluff overlooking the Yantic River below. U.S. President Andrew Jackson laid the foundation of this monument, which bears the name Uncas, in 1833. Descendants of Uncas, many of whom were sachems or chiefs, are also buried here. In 1907, Buffalo Cody and members of his Wild West show gathered here while they were touring in the area. To proceed to waypoint number 18, continue down Sachem Street and cross Washington Street at the intersection. Proceed along the south side of the open green to your left, continuing to the intersection of Broadway. The waypoint is located in the southeastern corner of the Chelsea Parade Ground. Track 20, waypoint number 18, Chelsea Parade Ground, Park Congregational Church, Norwich Free Academy, and Slater Memorial Museum. The large park to the north is Chelsea Parade, a gift to the city from several landowners in 1797. This was used for militia drills, the bicentennial and tercentennial celebrations in 1859 and 1959, and other civic events. At the north end of the park is the Civil War Monument, dedicated in 1873, and memorials to those who served in later conflicts. The Teal House, the white brick house with prominent chimneys to the south of the park, was built about 1789 as a hotel. Built in the Federal style, it has a ballroom on the third floor. After the hotel failed, the building became a private residence occupied for most of the 1800s by General William Williams and his wife, Harriet Peck Williams. The general was involved in manufacturing at the Falls and was the senior partner in the whaling firm of Williams and Barnes, operating out of New London until his death in 1870. The couple was the first in Norwich to celebrate a golden wedding anniversary in 1862. They gave land and money to help establish the Norwich Free Academy, located to the east of the parade. Park Congregational Church, a brown stone edifice located across the street from the Teal House and dedicated in 1874, was built on land donated by Harriet Peck Williams. It is an excellent example of the Richardsonian Romanesque style, designed by Stephen C. Earle, a Worcester, Massachusetts architect. This style features the use of large-scale round arches inspired by early medieval French architecture. Another example of this style is located on the campus of the Norwich Free Academy, directly behind Park Congregational Church. The Norwich Free Academy was incorporated in 1854 and is a privately governed, endowed, regional independent high school. In 1853, Dr. John P. Gulliver, pastor of the Main Street Congregational Church, garnered the support of the wealthy of the community to build a secondary school which would be open to any young man who could pass its entrance exam. The academy would be, in his own words, quote, dedicated to the provision of adequate training for all children of the community, unquote. Norwich Free Academy opened its doors in 1856. Set on 49 acres, the NFA campus has grown to include an observatory, 11 academic buildings, and athletic fields. The diversity of the topics offered within its curriculum include technology, business, and fine arts education, as well as advanced placement classes. It is the second largest high school in Connecticut and one of only 2 high schools in the country to have an art gallery. The tall, towered building is the Slater Memorial Museum. Stephen Earle also designed this building, which was erected by William Slater in honor of his father, John Fox Slater. Not only is the exterior beautiful, but it houses one of the most impressive collections of reproduction casts in the world. It was built in 1886 and is an example of the progressive community institutions which many Victorians left as their legacy. It must be visited to be appreciated. The Slater Memorial Museum is open to the public and contains many exhibits of early industrial artifacts manufactured in Norwich, as well as an extensive collection of Native American artifacts and Roman, Greek, and Renaissance reproduction sculptures. The Converse Art Gallery contains a changing collection of locally produced art as well as period pieces. At the northern end of the Academy's campus, the listener will notice a sand-colored Italian villa-style building. Today, this building is the Latham Science Center, part of the Academy's library and science department. The main part of the structure was the home of Lafayette Foster, who was President of the United States Senate in the 1860s. The sandstone color and style were meant to replicate the homes which dotted the Tuscan countryside. Taking a vacation to the rural areas of Italy appealed to the wealthy Americans of the Victorian era, who were enamored with its romantic beauty. They tried to duplicate the pastoral look with their own homes, hence the popularity of Italianate, Italian villa, Gothic-style mansions. To proceed to waypoint number 19, continue south down Broadway. The waypoint is located at 270 Broadway. Track 21. Waypoint number 19. Bill House, 270 Broadway. Book publisher Henry Bill built this house in the Italianate style about 1856. The large brackets at the eaves, cupola, and rounded windows are typical of this style. The semicircular entrance tower is unusual. The style often features asymmetrical square towers. Bill made his fortune using traveling agents to travel around the world selling his books. His most successful book was Keto's Illustrated History of the Bible. The building immediately north of the Bill House was constructed about 1876 by John Fox Slater, wealthy cotton manufacturer. His wife lived here, while he resided at Woodlawn, an estate further down Broadway. This is a quintessential Victorian house. White horizontal string courses contrast with the rest of the brickwork. The square tower, multiple dormers and bays, arched entry, and details mark this as an early example of the Queen Anne style. This is now used as the residence of the Roman Catholic Bishop of the Diocese of Norwich. To proceed to waypoint number 20, continue south down Broadway. The waypoint is located at the corner of Broadway and Broad Street. Track 22, waypoint number 20, E. Winslow Williams House, 242 Broadway. William's father, Erastus, a former sea captain, owned the mill at Yantic. He transferred this property to his son in 1855. The present house was probably built by him during the 1860s as mill owners reaped enormous profits from the demand for woolen uniform cloth during the Civil War. Later owners included paper manufacturer James L. Hubbard and his family, and John Porteous, partner in the Hislop, Porteous, and Mitchell Dry Goods Company. The Williams Mansion features a mansard roof in the French Second Empire style with Gothic Revival details. American architects and builders borrowed features from a variety of styles. As you walk south on Broadway, the next 2 blocks on your right were part of Woodlawn, the estate of John Fox Slater. Part of the mansion survives on Elm, together with the gardener's cottage at the top of Slater. John Fox Slater was the wealthiest individual in Norwich at the end of the Civil War, his fortune based on the Slater Mill, a cotton mill in nearby Jewett City. In 1882, 2 years before his death, Slater created $1 million fund to educate former slaves in the South. To proceed to waypoint number 21, continue south down Broadway. The waypoint is located across from St. Patrick's Cathedral. Track 23, waypoint number 21, St. Patrick's Cathedral. Irish immigrants came to Norwich in 1828 to build water power facilities in the Greenville section of town. The construction of the Norwich and Worcester Railroad started in 1835, offering more employment for Irish laborers. The Irish potato famine, which started in 1845, brought thousands more immigrants to the area. Poorly educated, lacking skills, and Roman Catholic, the Irish experienced discrimination in the almost completely Protestant community. They responded by building their own churches and schools. By 1871, the Irish community was prosperous enough to embark on the construction of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Designed by James Murphy of Providence, Rhode Island, the cathedral is built of granite in the Gothic Revival style. In contrast to the round arches of the Romanesque style, the Gothic Revival style uses pointed arches. The spire rises to a height of 216 feet. To proceed to waypoint number 22, continue south on Broadway, passing to the left of Little Plains Park. As you pass by Little Plains Park, note the granite monument to the Civil War-era 26th Regiment of Connecticut Volunteer Infantry. This regiment, raised primarily in Norwich, sustained heavy casualties in the Battle of Port Hudson on the Mississippi River. Waypoint number 22 is located at 167 Broadway. Track 24, waypoint number 22, Ripley Woodhull House, 167 Broadway. The The monumental portico features smooth Roman Doric order columns and an arched entry window. This style is known as Jeffersonian Classicism and was inspired by Thomas Jefferson's observations of Roman architecture while in Europe. The attic window is inspired by the Federal style. Built about 1830 for Commissioner Merchant William D. Ripley, the house is similar in style to the Female Academy of 1828 on Jail Hill. Notice the difference between this house and the circa 1845 Johnson House next door. The Johnson House is in the Greek Revival style and features a massive portico with Ionic order columns. These have scroll-like vaults at the head of each column and are patterned after the temples of ancient Greece. To proceed to waypoint number 23, continue south down Broadway. The waypoint is located at the Norwich City Hall. Track 25, waypoint number 23, 100 Broadway, Norwich City Hall. The original City Hall and courthouse burned in 1865. Local architect Evan Burdick created an elaborate structure in the French Second Empire style, whose characteristic feature is the sloping mansard roof. Burdick also designed the United Congregational Church across Broadway from City Hall and the Warrigan Hotel at the end of Broadway. The entry porch is of cast iron. Local craftsmen created much of the exterior and interior details, including furniture. The plaza in front was completed in 1999. Inside, an 1860 election banner featuring candidate Abraham Lincoln appears. This was purchased and restored through contributions from the citizens of Norwich. To proceed to waypoint 24, continue south down Broadway to its intersection with Main Street. The waypoint is located at the corner in front of People's United Bank. Track 26, waypoint number 24, corner of Broadway and Main Street, Warrigan Hotel. Standing at this intersection, one corner is dominated by the red brick Warrigan Hotel, built in 1853-1855 by local architect Evan Burdick in the Italianate style. In the 20th century, the elaborate cornice brackets and window hoods were removed. Developer Bruce Becker restored these and the beautiful second-floor ballroom. The most prominent guest at the hotel was Abraham Lincoln, who stayed the night of March 9, 1860, after speaking at City Hall to a capacity crowd. The yellow brick building on this intersection is the Shannon Building, built in 1910 to replace the 1891 Shannon Building, which was destroyed by fire in 1909. James B. Shannon, an Irish-American who made his fortune in liquor, was the owner. Architect Charles H. Preston designed the new building in fireproof brick. Trained in Chicago, Preston was influenced by the work of architect Louis Sullivan. The building currently houses various state of Connecticut offices. The Greystone Building on the northwestern corner of the intersection was built in 1894 for the Norwich Savings Society in the Chateauesque style. This elaborately decorated fascia is in stark contrast to the simplified, more modern style of the Shannon Building. The building is currently occupied by People's United Bank. To proceed to waypoint number 25, cross over Main Street to Courthouse Square, formerly known as Bankers Row. The waypoint is located across from the offices of Brown Jacobson, P.C. Track 27, waypoint number 25, Bankers Row, Courthouse Square. The two buildings on Courthouse Square were built after the 1909 fire to replace the former banks on this site. The Thames National Bank of 1911 is in the neoclassical style with far more elaborate detail than the earlier Greek Revival. The Uncas Merchant National Bank was built in 1910 in the Renaissance Revival style. The last building in Bankers Row is the 1907 Thames Loan and Trust Company, also in the Renaissance Revival style. The law offices of Brown Jacobson, P.C. now occupy the two center buildings. To proceed to waypoint number 26, cross over Connecticut Route 2 to Chelsea Harbor Drive and walk down the hill to Howard T. Brown Park. The waypoint is located in front of the gazebo. Track 28, waypoint number 26, Howard T. Brown Park, Chelsea Harbor Drive. 3 rivers form Chelsea Harbor. To the west is the Yanick River, to the east the Shetucket River, and flowing out toward Long Island Sound is the Thames River. The naturally deep harbor allowed for the development of shipping and trade here. This entire park is built on fill. The waterfront once extended down Market Street to the intersection of Water Street. The old wharves are located below street level. In the 1980s, workers digging a new sewer line found a Revolutionary War-era cannon on one of the old wharfs. By the mid-1800s, the area we stand on now was filled. A connector between the Norwich and Worcester Railroad and the New London, Willimantic, and Palmer Railroads ran across the area of the park, with lines going into a freight depot. The creation of this waterfront park was made possible by a generous donation by the Howard T. Brown Foundation. Trade with the West Indies dominated waterfront use in the 1700s. In the 1800s and early 1900s, coal, lumber, bales of cotton, and wool were brought in, and finished goods shipped out. Today, recreational fishing and boating are the dominant uses here. The reader is now directed to the final waypoint of the tour, which is located in the northwest corner of Howard T. Brown Park and marks the beginning of the Riverside Heritage Trail. This trail, which is marked and has numerous historical placards, will take listeners back to the Yanick Falls waypoint. From there, the listener should backtrack to Lafayette Street and hence to the tour's beginning at the Leffingwell Inn. This concludes the Rose City Renaissance walking tour of historic Norwich. The tour is by no means all-encompassing, and the listener is encouraged to further explore the rich history and heritage available in Norwich's neighborhoods. For additional information regarding Norwich's history, please contact the Norwich Historical Society, the Leffingwell Inn, or the Slater Memorial Museum. Funding for this production was provided by a grant from the Connecticut Main Street Program and the Preservation of Place Program in cooperation with the Commission on Culture and Tourism. Research was provided by Dale Plummer, Norwich City Historian. Rose City Renaissance wishes to thank our many partners and volunteers who made this production possible.